Hey, I'm Sean Teis. Thanks for coming back to Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. I'm excited to have our guest today, Darrin Gray from Athletes in Action. So great to have you today.
Well, great to be with you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your ministry before we get into talking about fatherlessness?
Well, where to begin? So I think of it sort of as influencing the sports influencers that can influence the world for Christ. So I find myself in the midst of NFL players, coaches, and alumni a lot, finding ways to connect with them and connect with their own hearts, right? How do they relate to their own families, their teams, the community, and so many of them now, Sean, as you know, we're fatherless. We're in terms of an intact family, stepdads, foster kids, adoption, foster, all the complexities that can be involved in this fatherless process. But spending time with them, connecting with their hearts, and ultimately trying to guide them to a deeper relationship with Christ.
Yeah, you and I connected on social media a few years ago, and then we met up in, I think, Indianapolis area while we were there for our ministry. Is that where you're based out of? You're in Indianapolis? Or were you just there for ministry?
No, Indy is where I grew up. Indiana is home.
Okay, that's wonderful. And so you've been doing this for a long time. How many years have you been with Athletes in Action?
Well, 5 with Athletes in Action, but I've been in the fatherless field for 20 years now. Yeah, I intersected with a guy that some of your listeners may know about, now retired NFL head coach Tony Dungy, when he became the head coach here in Indianapolis. And I got very involved as a stakeholder and a volunteer in his National Fatherhood program, now called All Pro Dad. And so ended up going to work for them full time for 11 years. I was a practitioner deep down in the field and found ways to see what we could do to help, address this systemic issue in our society.
Yeah, I've met Mark Merrill before from there, from All Pro Dads. It's great organization. Tell us more about that, just real quick. Just tell the viewers if they haven't heard of it. I'm sure they have, but they haven't.
Yeah, I remember sitting in a conference room and writing these words: "Give me an hour a day, right? Give me a month a year," and finding ways to get guys. I blew that, but give me a minute a day, an hour a month, and a day a year. The idea is the minute a day is, plug into some daily fatherhood content. Give me an hour a month. Hey, plug into an All Pro Dad chapter, now of which there are more than 1,000 all over America. I remember when there were none. Then give me a day a year to come out and celebrate on an NFL turf somewhere. And that was really where I specialized in helping to pilot and found our traveling NFL roadshow, which we call the All Pro Dad Father and Kids Experience. So for 11 years, I commuted once a month from Indianapolis to Tampa, helping Mark Merrill and George Woods and all the great folks there to build that project out, and then left there about 6 years ago, and then onboarded shortly thereafter with Athletes in Action, which I had been involved with as a volunteer and a stakeholder, helping them with some of their Super Bowl programming, but got more formally involved and now serve as Chief Marketing Officer and down deep in the fabric of this global sports ministry that helps to, really connect with the hearts of athletes across the globe.
Now, tell us. So, if you follow you on social media, you'll see you got the flashy side. The Super Bowl breakfast, the different things. Tell us about that, but also tell us about the day-to-day with Athletes in Action, the discipleship and the things that go on there. Can you tell us about the flashy, but also the day-to-day?
Sure. We have 3 signature events, and I help to guide some of those. We have Super Bowl breakfast. That's the Bart Starr Award, NFL sanctioned program at each Super Bowl, 36 years in the making, and honored to be deep down in the fabric of that, helping to co-produce some of the programming as well as some of the business side of that. Then we've got our All-Star Breakfast, which is an NBA All-Star weekend, and find ways to connect with the hearts of NBA players and the whole ecosystem around sport as it relates to NBA. And then finally, where I was a couple of weeks ago, which is the NCAA All-Star Week, or NCAA championship weekend. And that's our Wooden Keys to Life, which builds upon Athletes in Action's longstanding relationship with the Wooden family. In fact, we're building the Wooden Family Fieldhouse in Xenia, Ohio right now. And finding ways to use the language of sports to reach athletes and the ecosystem around them. So, it's just like you called it, the flashy part. I think that's a fine way to put it. But the real work happens down on the 200 college campuses across America, where sports ministers are connecting with the hearts of athletes and finding ways to build movements on campus, and then moving toward what we call the equipped, multiplying disciple maker. In other words, once someone's saved and they begin to come along on the journey and they move away from their former life, hey, how do we guide them so that they then can also become a leader in the faith and an equipped, multiplying disciple maker so they can make more disciples? And that's how evangelism, I think, moves to discipleship. And that's really what Athletes in Action has been about for over 50 years. So proud to be a part.
And I love what you do. I actually worked for FCA for a little while back in 2010, 2011. I was there for still doing our ministry on the side, but also with that. And I saw some of the nuts and bolts of that. Are you guys very similar to FCA, similar work? You guys are more on college campuses, or?
Well, not only are we similar, we love Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I partner all the time with FCA and find ways to build bridges. They specialize in many ways on college campuses as well, but the thing that they do even better than we do, they do the high school huddle. Like, they just do such a great job of having a foothold inside of American public schools. And that's so valuable. We overlap on many campuses. In fact, many campuses is called FCAIA, where we actually co-locate with space. We share resources. We recently ran an event with Tim Tebow where we came together. We did our programming because we're all addressing the athlete, and then I call it the ecosystem around sport, which is family and teams and community. So we think highly of them, along with InterVarsity and professional athlete outreach and Nation of Coaches. And so I really specialize in being able to work across all of the ministry organizations and find ways to build common ground. I'm great at partnerships and finding ways to create fertile ground so that we can address the deeper needs of athletes, which is mental, physical, spiritual, and get down and deep. In fact, I wrote a book about it. It was called The Jersey Effect with Tony Dungy and others. And really, we get down deep in the fabric of what influence actually is, why athletes tend to have a little bit more of that because of their role inside of a school or a community, and then how they can live for Christ and ultimately reach more people because of the platform that God has put them on.
Now, I completely agree with you about the partnership. I mean, I went up to Pennsylvania to do the North Central Pennsylvania FCA chapter, close to Penn State. So I partnered with an Athletes in Action guy there at Penn State.
Yes.
And he was showing me the ropes. He had been there for a long time. And so, great ministry. Now shifting gears over to fatherlessness. There are a lot of fatherless athletes out there that I think a lot of them, they find their outlet in sports. They're able to even channel their anger and aggression through sports. Speak to that. What you've seen about fatherlessness over the years.
I'll do it by way of a story. So I can remember working with Tony and Mark Merrill, who you mentioned earlier, and helping to craft some of the top 10 ways to be an all-pro dad. Like, how do we think about this? And we put these on the back of a T-shirt, and we ran an event up at the Colts complex. And afterward, Tony passed these out to some of the players and connected with the community. But afterwards, one of the players came up to Tony and he read through the top 10 things, and he said, "Hey, Tony, I've never done a single one of these things with my dad. In fact, I don't know who my dad is." And it was things like, we were trying to normalizing what it means to be a good father. Hey, good dads eat with their kids, right? Good dads pray with their kids. Good dads do these things, right? And so it was a real important moment, right? As we began thinking about how to guide the program, not just to speak to good dads that want to be better dads, but how do we also address this intractable issue that America and other countries, quite frankly, are facing, and find ways to insert mentors and other sustained strategies that help men that need to grow up and find ways to father their children. Hey, and we no longer, it was, hey, love your wife. No, love love the wife of your kid, right? Because so many of these guys, and this was your question, they're not married, but they might have children. And so, how do we think differently? How do we allow that to help us to understand how to serve them and connect with them? And that's really what my heart got captivated by. In fact, that sort of precipitated, in some ways, my move from all pro dad, where I was needed to run business practice and work toward athletes in action, where a significant part of what I do is to minister directly to athletes and connect with their hearts and ultimately guide them into a deeper saving relationship with Christ. So that's
Yeah.
probably the heart of it.
What are some practical things you guys did then? Once that guy said that to you, what are some practical things that, and what was your response to him? Or was that to Tony Dungy? The response that
Yeah,
you had to
well,
that,
we said it to Tony, but Tony has told it, with me and many
yeah,
others on stage many times because it helped to just slow us down, right? Sometimes before you speed up, you got to slow down a little bit.
yeah,
And so that just made us think about, hey, how do we do programming that addresses fatherhood inside of the league itself? So I helped to form a strategic relationship with the NFL to pilot programming that we do each year at the Super Bowl. That program continues on and lives on after me, almost 10 years in the making, where we ran the All Pro Dad Father and Kids experience, but for NFL players only. And so we began to draw them together and take the time to slow down and listen to them and understand, like, you're not all coming from the perfect little intact biological family, but we want to be attentive to who you are and how it is that you might need to be ministered to. And in our case, some of the practical things, as you were addressing, is look, they can't go to church every Sunday. They're doing something else. They're playing a football game. So we began teaching about, like, okay, like, what does Sabbath mean? How do we think about addressing the differences that might be in your life versus another household down the street? And then just being really attuned to the fact that we needed to show them other role models that they could look up to and demonstrate through Dungy's Diary, for instance, which was a multimedia platform that we began to create. Like, hey, how does Tony do it? And that helped to give a trusted figure, one of the most trusted men in America. How do we address that to allow them to say, hey, I ought to do better. And how can I do that? And so, it's teaching them simple things like, I believe in you because I love you, because I'm proud of you, because, like, when's the last time you stopped and paid attention to your child, right, in a really unique way, not giving them a gift. But this is back to your unique questions. Like, you have money now, you're playing in the league. Like, how do we slow down and go, hey, it's less about gifts and it's more about speaking to their really emotional need and teaching them little techniques that they could use to take back into their families, to get better, to listen better, to connect better. And it was everything from chore charts and just things like normalizing things that they miss because they didn't grow up
yeah.
with an intact family. So I don't have all the materials right here with me, but I remember constructing a lot of that curriculum and just thinking about it differently, and then bringing on 60 NFL players, coaches, and alumni, which would then help us to make sure that the NFL programming was kind of hitting the mark. And then, of course, we had our broader programming for all of America, some of which was applicable, but there were some differentials. I think I addressed a couple of those there.
Now, with the pro sports, have you seen where, like, some of the organizations, the NFL, NBA, MLB, are they doing anything? 'Cause I know they have a lot of athletes that come in that are fatherless. Is there anything that they're doing? I mean, it might not be spiritual, but mentoring wise?
Yeah, I do see a number of initiatives going on. The NBA is a player engagement director now. That's a new thing that the NFL began to pilot and pioneer, and I think the leagues are kind of watching each other and finding ways to make sure that they're addressing sort of the social, emotional, and the overall wellness needs of athletes. So that's one, but I think the NFL does it best. I mean, they put together a whole constructive strategy. It was all under the leadership of a man named Troy Vincent, hopefully a future Hall of Famer, along with Art McAfee and many, many others. There's a whole network inside of the league, but they do a fantastic job of attending to the broader needs of athletes. And, I've seen a lot of their research, which they've got a lot of fact-based learnings on the 30,000 guys that have played the league and where they're at and what they can do to make sure that they're attending to these needs, because when they're happy at home, hey man, they're going to have a better chance of being more successful at work. And that's what we all want, is a great quality product on Sunday. But it's more than that. These are real human beings with attendant issues and needs, and lots of joy too, right? And how could they bring more joy to these guys? And I think the NFL has done a pretty darn good job of working toward that. But they're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Right. They might not say it this way, but there's sin in the world, right? There's brokenness, there's pain, there's challenges. This fatherless epidemic, it's intractable, right? That last verse in Malachi is there for a reason. And if you kind of think about, Malachi 4:6, right? One day there will come a prophet formed in the image of Elijah who will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And if that doesn't happen, there will be hell to pay. Now, that's the Message version, but it gives you a good and clear picture, right? Like, we have to sort of be formed in this image of Elijah to the extent that we can kind of be willing to be a voice in the wilderness, even when it's hard, even when people are like, no, 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 what about single moms? I'm like, bless single moms, bring them on, let's go. We love them. We want to support and encourage them. But the most ideal form of family, we believe, right? Mother, father, coming together, forming a unit that ultimately raises up their children. So I know that our work will never be done. You're in this space too, so you get it. I hope I'm not being overly pointed with my words, but this is hard stuff. But it's kind of like where the wild things are. Like, how do we just continue to know that there's a wild rumpus out there? We want to be in it. We want to be part of it, but point people toward true north, which is a
Yeah.
deeper relationship with God. And I think that's how you guys do it with God as my dad. Like, hey, you didn't have a biological dad. Look, we get it. That's hard. But God can be your father. Hey, build a relationship there and then find the support that you need to grow.
That's so good and so true. Now, tell us about the fatherless athletes you've worked with. What are some things that you've seen with fatherless
Mm,
individuals, what they're dealing with? Because the thing is, people look at them and they think, wow, they do have money, they do have success, they do have fame,
mm,
but sometimes their lives are just still falling apart, even with all those things. What have you seen with the different
mm.
athletes you've worked with?
Oh my gosh, the stories I can tell. I'll pull one up in recent memory. His name is Ellis, and he was on Tony's team that Gruden ended up winning the Super Bowl with down in Tampa Bay. Ellis wins. Great player. You had Warren Sapp on one side, and you had Ellis on the other, and these guys were tackling machines, right? And Warren's in the Hall of Fame now, and Ellis tells these stories and about how the criticality of my relationship, Tony's relationship with him, helping him. I used the word earlier, sort of normalize like what it meant to be a good dad. And now Ellis, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, he texted me sort of out of the blue, and it kind of blew me away. He was just like, Darrin, thank you. And it was some really specific language about the things that I had done that he had actually heard, he'd latched onto. I had taken him to the Holy Land on a tour. I do Holy Land tours with the NFL players, and that's super interesting. And I
Mm.
really love that to teach and guide and mentor. But in particular, I spent a lot of time with Ellis, and he just kept showing up. Like, he just like every time I would call him about a program or an event or a strategy, he's like, man, I'm in, whether it was digital or in person. One time he even flew back early from Houston to get back to Tampa to do a thing at his own expense. And so I'm like, okay, this guy is paying attention. And I quickly began to learn who he was, and he didn't have a good dad. Like,
Mm.
and his situation wasn't ideal, and so he really was watching me and how I attended to him with respect and love, and told him I was proud of him, and noticed him and saw him. Right? People want to believe and belong. They want to be part of something greater, and kind of gave him some role and a purpose, and so over time, that relationship has blossomed such that he's like, man, like, your coaching has been really valuable. And I don't say that to, celebrate who I am. It's Christ in me. But I try to find ways to just just listen and be present for guys. Man, I had a situation this week where a player, whoever, I won't name the name because everyone on this call would know him, super famous, and his brother's in a situation right now, And he grew up fatherless, and his mother passed, and there's really complex stuff. And sometimes it's just a matter of listening well and going, "Hey, it's gonna be okay. I believe in you," because they
Yeah.
didn't always have that, right? They got it from football, they got it from the sport that they played, but in life itself, like for who they are, not for how they played, and that's identity work, and that's at the heart, if you want to think about it, of what I really do to help them understand that there's a good God, and they can be all that they want to be right in Christ. And so that's my story.
What do you say to an athlete? I mean, what do you about identity? Where do you start there? I mean, what would you like? They come to you and they say, "Hey, I didn't have a dad, and I feel empty inside." Where would you start?
I start with questions. Rather than try to have some prescribed programmatic around identity. It's not about who you are; it's about whose you are. Like all that's true, but
Yeah.
whoosh. For me, it's just tell me about that. How does that feel? What are you learning? And oftentimes you'll find that they just performance is the thing that they've just grown up, and there's this they've got regret about the past, they've got anxiety about the current. Am I going to lose my job? There's this constant state of unrest. And when you're assured of who you are and whose you are, right, you can rest easier. And so I take them back to verses like 2 Timothy 1:7, right? We're not to have timidity nor fear, but power and love and self-discipline. And I talk about those things and the interrelationship between them, and some of the definitions, some of the translations of that great little verse from Timothy talk about having a sound mind. And I go, let's talk about that. How do you think? How are you thinking right now? And just get inside. And then I've got some tools that I'm able to use to help, slow them down a little bit, and get them to, really address some of the longer term issues. And a lot of it just comes down to, they just didn't feel loved growing up. And they knew that if they had to play well, and that's when they felt love. And when they lost, they didn't feel well. And that's a bad loop for all of us, right? Whether we're business people or whether we're professional athletes. So those are some of the simple things that I do to pay attention to guys and lean in on that topic of identity.
Do you work with any of the pro chaplains? You guys, Athletes in Action, do they partner with them? Do anything that they see with the issue of fatherlessness that they've communicated with you guys?
Yeah, so the league is gracious to really look to Athletes in Action, our pro chaplaincy department, to help guide a lot of that. I think we've got 8 NFL chaplains on staff right now. Then, of course, there are some unaffiliated chaplains and a few FCA chaplains. And we just try to build that network. And most of them participate. Many of them are my dear friends. I mean, within the last 7 days, I've probably talked to 6. I'm trying to think. So a lot of these guys are in my life too, right? Because I need coaching as well. I need to listen and pay attention and stay attuned to what's going on. But last week we had our global Athletes in Action conference. All of the chaplains from across our network were in town, and also like we've got chaplains across Major League Soccer. We've got some NBA chaplains. We've got many other sports where we do a lot of deep work as well, and swimming and diving, Olympic stuff, a track and field, bicycling, like stories that people don't know about because the people that are playing them aren't household names like the guys in the NFL are. But your question was, what are those guys seeing? And I think it's echoing a lot of the sentiment that I'm talking about. I just think that they're able to, through systematic ways, go deeper and deeper. Because if you think about it, right, if you have a fully embedded chaplain that's like in it, he's on the sidelines, he's down in it, like he's a coach, and yet he has that he's that safety valve, right? That you can really talk to him because every day, like he's not reporting in on your state of mental health like the team psychologist might be. he's able to listen well and connect with you, and then connect with the coaches and your family members and the front office and other places that allow him to be useful inside of that team. And so I think of so many chaplains that come to mind that just do such a tremendous job of ministering to the needs of athletes in all sports, but especially in the NFL.
Now, you've been doing this for a long time. What have you seen back when you started working with All Pro Dad, or even before that, until now, with the issue of fatherlessness? Because it continues to grow. What's the differences you've seen between back then and now?
The field of fatherhood, like just
With,
the whole
no,
fatherhood.
with fatherlessness, fathers being absent, and stuff like that. Have you seen a major difference in the players where they're worse, or what are your thoughts about that?
I don't know that it's any worse now than it was 20 years ago. I mean, I don't want to have my head in the sand either, but I think it's just a matter of all of society has now a new awareness about the importance of mental health, the importance of overall wellness, about how Tony and I say academic, athletic, social, and spiritual. We sort of toss leadership and social development down in the social sphere. We've got spiritual spheres to that higher calling, that connection right to God and into your faith. The athletic part, of course, that goes without saying, and then finally, the academic part, which is, your playbook, or if you're still in college, you're a student athlete first, and then how does that fit together, and kind of helping guys understand where they fit, but letting them know that their performance is not who they are, and there's something greater, and finding ways just to have a meal with them, to share our hope with them, and ultimately let them know that there's an eternal solution, right, to these temporal problems that they might be facing, and also teach them about joy, right? Teach them, like, there can be a culture of joy when you attend to others first, right? When you attend to Jesus and attend to ultimately yourself third, and know that, right, you're more than just how you play the game. So that's why you see a lot of these guys on their profiles now, on Instagram or otherwise. They've begun to share more broadly, and we could have a whole nother conversation about social media. Perhaps we should, but as a general rule, you see these guys start to expand. Like, here's who I am. They're putting a Bible verse up. They're connecting. Not all of them, but the good guys. That's who I really personally specialize in and working with and relating to and finding ways to serve. But letting them know it's okay to be a little broken. Like, sometimes boldness before brokenness can make you a bully. And I'll say it again: boldness before brokenness can make you a bully. The idea is out of context. You're just doing this to people all the time. I see coaches like that in all sports, youth sports included. But it's okay. Like, can be a little broken. Like, I don't have to be perfect, and that can be related to their mental health, their physical health. And so anyway, we find this last weekend I was doing some ministry programming with the Uncommon Sports Group, formerly known as Managers on a Mission, which attends to the needs of sports equipment managers and physical trainers, guys down in it. And so think about the trainer, for instance. What's the role of the trainer in a team? And if that guy knows Jesus, right? Guys are, getting taped or connecting, or maybe, they're had an injury that they're attending to. Man, those guys can meet them where they are. And so we sort of think about it as the whole ecosystem around sport. I don't want to bore your listeners with all the thought that goes into this, but, it's not just anymore a traditional chaplain, but we're pleased that, the NFL is still like 32 teams. Many of them have 2 chaplains. Many of them have a player engagement director. Every team, it's okay to kneel down after the game. They all have a pregame chapel, whether it's on Saturday night or Sunday morning before the game. Like, that's pretty cool, man, that's still safe. And, all that got launched in '89 with this chaplaincy effort with the help of Athletes in Action. And that stemmed from what was happening in college sports, and then led with the great leadership of so many of the men whose shoulders upon which I stand, like Dave Hanna and others. So we're honored to do the work that we do, and just to be a small part of God's big plan inside of the world of sports.
Now, with your chaplain, with the church, the services they have, do most of the players attend those, or is it like 50-50 or?
It really varies widely, man. I did a couple this year where I'll serve as, usually when they travel into a new city, they'll have a guest chaplain that'll pop in, or a pastor or a thought leader in the field of sports. So I won't name the teams, but some of them are giant, like overflowing. Others are small. And I just think a lot of it comes down to the leadership inside the organization, that really makes the guys know that, hey, it's okay. Back to the broken part, like you're not broken. Just, I mean, sure, we're all broken, right? Sin nature and all that. We could have a theological discussion, but hey, it's okay to go to chapel and to go get filled up. And people might debate me on this one, but I don't even care if they're praying to the God of winning. Like I just come and learn, like just be a part, like get in the room. And for a less mature believer, like, Lord, help me win so I can have a bigger platform. Like, okay, we'll start there. But how do we move toward the more obedient, right, life, and move toward a deeper understanding of what it is that we want to return to Christ because of what He did for us, right? This unmerited favor that we got, and so we love the work we do.
Now, tell us more about the Super Bowl breakfast. That's kind of how you and I connected. We were looking at maybe coming to one of the Super Bowls. We didn't get to make it, but someday I plan to make it to your Super Bowl breakfast. But the Bart Starr Award you said about.
Yep.
Tell us about that, and has any fatherless individuals ever won that? Just off the top of your head.
Yeah, many. Warwick Dunn won it. I think of him immediately. Anthony Munoz was fatherless, functionally fatherless, greatest Mexican American, or Latino to ever play the game of football. Wow. Both of those guys come immediately to mind. I'm sure if I cross-sorted that, I don't know that I've ever sat down and put a chart together. I probably should. Great idea. Let's do a pilot little research project together and get a little chat GPT going to see if we can isolate which ones had intact families or not. But to answer your question, these are tremendous men that have great accomplishments in the field of football. And yet they make family and faith and their community really important too. I think of this year's winner, unbelievable Kirk Cousins. I went to his home. We filmed 4 hours. What in essence was the Bart Starr Award special that aired on CBS, adjacent to the live program that we produced at the Super Bowl. It's open to the public. Hey, come on out. It goes this year's Vegas, next year's New Orleans, the following year San Francisco. It's a very amazing event, NFL sanctioned, which is beautiful that we have the covering of the league, because we do things with such excellence. And that's really my background in media, marketing, communications, player development, all of these things that we're able to accomplish. But tremendous event. Learn more at superbowlbreakfast.com. This will be the 36th annual event. I don't know who's going to win this year's event, but we've got a great cast of characters, and Terry Bortz and Corwin Anthony and so many people at Athletes in Action that lean in to help produce that amazing event, and just proud to be a part.
Now, just real quick, tell us about the Bart Starr Award again. Just how do they win that? What's the credentials for that?
Yeah, so they're the teams and the players are polled each year. And they're essentially, it's player nominated, like who on your team represents the values of Bart Starr, which was, kind of this faith, family, and excellent in football too. And so there is a criteria. You go on the website, you can see the exact criteria, but the way that we think about it is, we produce the ballot, and then the individual players then vote, much like the Pro Bowl, and we're just blessed to be able to produce something like that. And then that winner is invited to come and participate in the live program. And then around that, myself and the program committee produce just one whale of an amazing event, fast and furious, some live, some digital, and then a TV program around that. This year we had, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Tony Dungy, Mike Singletary, Anthony Munoz, like Kirk Cousins, DeMario Davis. Like, it doesn't even make sense, but these guys know that they need to, because they've been given much, right? They can also give much, and because they're anchored with that heart set, and because we're communicating and engaging them all year round. Then when it comes time for the Super Bowl, hey, that's their native habitat. How do we bring them in? And we've had so many amazing winners over the years, and that all got started with the help of Joe Gibbs 36 years ago, and now here we find ourselves. And I've been involved with the program since 2012, the year that the Super Bowl came to Indianapolis. And Tony was telling me, hey, you should. I was still full time at All Pro Dad, right? And he's like, you should check it out. And so I just jumped in and started helping on some media and some programming with that. And man, just a blessing now to be able to do it in a more holistic way. Is pretty cool.
That's awesome. We have less than a minute left. Will you just share with us where to find you, social media, websites, how we can connect with you further?
Yeah, DarrinGray.com. We're at Darrin Gray 2020, as in 2020 vision. So DARRINGRAY. You'll find me if you Google me. Would love to interact with you in the social spaces and all the places you might think I would be: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, but always trying to post things that are uplifting about gifted leaders that understand who they are and why they're in the sport that they're in to help make a positive difference in the world. So thanks for having me on this week. It's been a blessing to be here with you today, to see you in action and get to join in fellowship with you.
It was great to have you on, Darrin. And thanks for the inspiration and the insights in the NFL and all the other different sports. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. We want to now challenge you to take the next step by either starting a single mom community group in your church or with your ministry, or by joining our network of God is My Dad churches and ministries. Isn't it a great experience to be able to start a single mom community group?
Yeah, and it's just, if you talk to single moms, a lot of times what they'll tell you is the one thing they're lacking is that community, just a group that they can go in and they know there's no judgment. Everyone may not have the same situation. Everyone doesn't know what they're going through, but they can go in and they know there's no judgment. And it takes that kind of that restriction and that wall down for them so that they can share and then that they can grow in Christ.
And our single mom community groups are a wonderful ministry. And if your church can start one, we'd love to have you. We can help you get set up. We have the curriculum and all the resources you need. If you can't start one, we'd love to have you start by joining our network of churches and ministries, our God is My Dad network of churches and ministries, where you can get your church or your ministry on our map, and people can find you and find your ministry in your church so that they can get plugged into your church or ministry locally. So check that out. You can find all these resources at lifefactors.org. We have books, we have all kinds of content on there at lifefactors.org. Check it out today.